Thank you guys for coming. We're going to go ahead and review two of our academic integrity kind of based solutions. The first of which is Turnitin, and then the second will be Proctorio. I'm going to share just a couple slides that I'd made in the past about Turnitin just to kind of frame the conversation. And then we will dive into a sample Turnitin report and chat about what you can and can't see there, and wrap it up with Turnitin. I'll show you how to set it up in Canvas, and then we'll look at Proctorio. Just quickly, Turnitin, we use their similarity tool. So Turnitin similarity quantifies how similar a student's work is to other pieces of writing, highlighting any areas in the paper that match outside sources. So using that information, instructors can determine if the matches are appropriate or not based on the assignment expectations and the acceptable thresholds. So, Turnitin, checks student writing, and these are submitted assignments, not discussions, or anything that's written in a quiz. It has to be submitted through the assignment tool. Um, it can check that writing against the internet. So Turnitin actively archives websites and holds over 70 billion current and removed pages in their database from the internet. Publications. So this contains articles from the library databases, textbook publishers, digital reference collections, subscription-based publications, homework helper sites, and books. Submitted work. So this is an umbrella term for all items previously submitted to assignments within the institution. And then Crossref, these are scholarly articles that have either been published or not yet published. So it checks against all of those databases, submitted work. It does also check against other institutions where we have access. So just a few misconceptions before we dive in. The similarity report isn't a plagiarism report. So if you get something back and it says that um, it has a score of 48%, that doesn't necessarily mean that 48% of the paper is plagiarized. You just kind of gotta go in and look at it to see if it is or not. You can determine if a paper is acceptable. You That's a misconception. Instructors can determine if a paper is acceptable just by looking at the score. The score shows the percentage of plagiarized content in the paper. There's a perfect similarity score. So to some extent, you don't want to see a 0 on your student's similarity score because that to some extent indicates that they're not using sources, they're not using language consistent in the field. So you're going to see a little bit of similarity here and there. If you don't, then that is an interesting and unique situation, and I would really like to see it. I've never seen a 0 on a similarity report. The similarity report can be used as a punitive tool. Turnitin emphasizes, don't use these as a punitive tool. Use it to try and inform students of what is and is not acceptable so that they know. And then students lose intellectual property rights after submitting papers. Their papers are still, even if they're submitted to the Turnitin database, they're protected. So we're going to dive into a sample report. So this is one that I put into Turnitin last night, and I purposely did some fishy stuff in here. So we see just kind of quickly that we've got some green highlight, we've got some red highlight. So what does all of this mean? Um, Over here, the red means that something is included in the paper, but it's not cited or quoted. If it's orange, it's missing quotation marks. Maybe they included a citation, but they needed quotations. Um, Yellow means it's just missing the citation. If it's green, it means it's cited and quoted. So they've included the quotation marks and they've included the citation or reference. So that green one that we see up top, I did copy and paste this from a source, but it is in quotation marks. And I did cite it here parenthetically and list it down here as a reference. So that's why it shows up as green. I can choose to just not see those. So I can filter out anything that's quoted. So what I did there was I clicked filters and I can exclude quoted text. I can also exclude cited text. Um, if I want to exclude the bibliography, I can. And I do encourage people to do that because if you submit, this was just something I threw together in like less than 5 minutes, right? Um, but if you submit an actual paper that has scholarly references, the references page all looks like it's plagiarized, but it's just that other papers use the same references. So I tell people it's good to just exclude the bibliography. You can also choose to exclude small matches. So they by default suggest a threshold of 8 words. So if the student uses 8 words that match a source or sources out there in their databases, you can say, I'm not really worried about those. That may just be a coincidence that those 8 words were used together. So you can choose to exclude those. Um, and once you do, you apply the filters. You can also choose if you want to compare these submissions against any of those databases I referenced. So submitted works, internet content, publications, Crossref or Crossref posted content. You can uncheck any of those. I'll leave them checked. Um, so we'll just apply those filters. And I don't know if you guys saw, but it went from a 47% similarity down to a 35. So now we can kind of look a little more strategically at the writing here. So let's see. We've got a lot of red. Um, so this first one, if we click on, it's going to list the not cited or quoted sources by the amount or percentage that it thinks the paper represents of that source. So the percent of the paper that matches that source, it's going to put highest. It's going to rank it by that percentage. So you can kind of go through here and say evolutionary forces, mutation, gene flow, migration, genetic drift, and natural selection. Eh, I don't know that I'm so worried about that one because that's how you define evolutionary forces and Hardy Weinberg. So let's say I'm not concerned. I can exclude it. Um, you can look at the next one. That's a lot. We're going to keep that one, right? So you just kind of strategically go through here, and you don't have to do this on every single paper, but it provides you an idea of where content may or may not have come from. And you can just look strategically at each source um, and the content that it thinks came from that source. So if you want to, you can view the full source text and it'll show the full source over there in the side panel. So those are all of the kind of not cited or quoted sources here. I didn't have any missing quotations or missing citations, but again, it would flag those. I do, however, have a couple flags. So I don't know that I have ever seen this myself, but Turnitin says that students might, maybe, try to trick the system. So they might try and like put a period between words and make it white so that the tool will see the period, not realizing that it's white, and not find the copied material from the internet. So if you copy and pasted a sentence and you just put a period between each word and made it white so that it didn't exactly match, if you were to really copy and paste it, um, they say students might try to do that to get around the detector. But you can see, you can flag that. So I actually did. And I don't know why it's showing these in different spots. Um, it's showing, yeah, it's showing the little red boxes in the right in the wrong place. But between each word here, I did put a period and I made the period white. So it quickly was like red flag, red flag. She copied this, and we know she did, but she tried to hide that she did by putting a period that is in a white font between them so we wouldn't catch it. So it found that. Um, I also tried to replace the O's in a few places with Cyrillic O's. So if you go to insert special character, you can find the Cyrillic O in there, and it's technically a special character and not the letter O. So they say students have potentially tried to do that. And so that's what I did. I went in and where there was an O in a few places, I just replaced it with the Cyrillic O. And so it was like, hello, you cannot do that. So these are the things that you can see in the report. Before I show you kind of what this looks like in Canvas and how you set it up there, do you have any questions for me? No? Okay. So, um, to set it up in Canvas so that you get this kind of report, what you can do, let me go to, this is my sandbox. In your course, you would just go to the module where you wanted to add an assignment, or you can just add the assignment directly in assignments and push the plus button. We're going to add an assignment. I'm going to just call it test, Turnitin for now. Go into it and edit. So you would provide here your instructions for the assignment like you usually would, set up your points. Um, Submission type is going to be online. I would do a file upload if I were you and not text entry. Just let's stick with file upload. And then define how many attempts the student gets. And then right beneath that, we have plagiarism review. So what you can do is use that drop down, change it from none to Turnitin similarity. And you kind of immediately get a few options. You can choose to go ahead and exclude bibliography and quotes from the reports. You can go in and toggle that on or off later, like I did in the report. So if you set it here, just know that it's not forever and ever so like that. Submission indexing. So this adds all the submissions to the institutional repository so that later papers will be checked against it. So if you are having students submit a rough draft and then later on they're going to submit a final paper, maybe we don't index the rough draft because once they submit that final paper, it's going to see that rough draft in there and be like, whoa, this kid submitted the same paper they submitted before, but with some changes. Um, so choose if you want to index all the submissions or not. And then you can choose when you want to generate the similarity reports. You can just generate them immediately and then done is done. Or they recommend, and I'll recommend this as well, immediately and on the due date because you can check it immediately and then after the due date, check it again. In that case, if a student were to submit the same content that somebody else submitted, you could catch it at the end date or at the due date. So, student A submits paper, looks good. Student B submits paper with some of the same content, and theirs gets flagged. But if you're checking again on the due date, then it's going to also flag student A, if that makes sense. Um, so I would always just do immediately and on due date. So that's it. That's all you've got to do to turn it on is use that little drop down, choose kind of the settings you want, and you can choose how to show the report to students if you want them to see it immediately after the assignment is graded, after the due date. Never, I discourage never. I think students should be able to see these, but you get to choose that. And then just configure the rest of it, right? Your due date, available from and until, whatever. And then save or save and publish if you're ready for it to go live. It's that simple to set it up. Now, once students have submitted, you can go to either the gradebook um, or just directly to SpeedGrader to access the reports. So in the gradebook, we see here that there's a yellow flag for the submission sample Turnitin. So that shows me that has been through Turnitin and it's flagged it and it's got some concerns. If it's green, then it's fine. If it's yellow, it's like, eh. If it's red, we got major problems. So you can then go to SpeedGrader for that specific assignment, or you could have done it from the column, and it'll show up right there. And that is your similarity score. If there's like a little clock right here, it means that it hasn't run it yet. So you can actually click that and resubmit it. Typically, it gets you the similarity score immediately, but every now and then you'll see the little clock icon there, and you can just click and resubmit it to turn it in, and it'll usually get its act together. So 33%. And that'll just bring you over to that report that we looked at earlier. So, any questions here? I'm about to look at Proctorio. So we're about to wrap up Turnitin. Oh, thank you, Troy, for the icon colors and score ranges.
Yeah. I'll just add as well that if you forget to Turnitin on an assignment, you cannot turn it on after the fact and have it still run the files through. So make sure you turn it on before any submissions start coming in, because it'll only check upon submissions or on the due date. So you can force it to kind of check on that due date again if you need to, but the best thing is to just have it turned on ahead of time. There's very rare cases where you might want to specifically run a paper through Turnitin that you received maybe through email or some other form. We can create a Turnitin account for you so that you can submit the paper through their website, not through Canvas. So if you ever have that need, like I want to submit this, I want to run this paper through the similarity checker, but I don't want to create an assignment in Canvas. Can I do that? Yes. So just reach out to the Welker Center and we can help you do that.